Have you ever looked up at a starry night and wondered how all those tiny little points of light become this vast universe we see?
It really is incredible, isn't it?
It is. Well, you're in for a treat because today's deep dive is all about you and your incredible sense of sight.
Wow.
So, using the physiology notes you shared from Dr. Rasha Eldeeb, uh, we're going on this journey inside the amazing human eye.
It is fascinating how we navigate the world through vision. It's like this intricate interplay of light biology, even a touch of physics.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And these notes from Dr. Eldeeb are a great starting point for understanding how much is going on behind the scenes of something we use every single day.
Exactly. I mean, we all know we have a blind spot, right?
Right.
But have you ever actually stopped to think about what that means? There's a literal gap in our visual field, but our brains just fill it in.
It's amazing.
That's just one of the mind-blowing things we'll be exploring today.
And speaking of blind spots, let's start with the star of the show, light itself. It's not just a simple beam.
Yeah.
Light actually behaves as both a particle and a wave.
What?
Yeah. Think of it like a stream of tiny bullets that also create ripples, like throwing a pebble in a pond.
Okay. That's a pretty wild concept. So how does that wave particle thing actually let us see?
Well, it's the wave part that's key for vision.
All right.
Each color we see corresponds to a different wavelength. It's like a rainbow red has the longest wavelength, then orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and finally violet with the shortest.
Okay.
But that's just the visible spectrum. There's a whole world of light we can't see, like ultraviolet and infrared.
Oh, wow. So we're basically surrounded by invisible light all the time.
We are.
That's kind of spooky, but also super cool.
Yeah.
The notes also mentioned the speed of light is a mind-boggling 300,000 kilometers per second.
It's fast.
That's practically instantaneous.
It is incredibly fast.
Yeah.
But to really understand how we see, we need to talk about how light interacts with objects. Reflection, absorption, and refraction.
Okay, let's break those down. Reflection is pretty straightforward. It's light bouncing off an object.
Right.
Like when you see a red apple, it's reflecting red light back at you.
Exactly.
Then there's absorption, where the object soaks up the light's energy. That's why a black t-shirt gets warmer in the sun than a white one. It's absorbing more light.
Right. And then we have refraction. That's the bending of light as it passes from one medium to another.
Okay.
Think about looking at a straw in a glass of water. It seems to bend at the surface.
Right.
That's refraction. It's also crucial for how our eyes focus light. The cornea, the clear front part of your eye, does most of the heavy lifting with its impressive focusing power.
Wait, so the cornea is like the eye's main lens, but what about the actual lens inside the eye?
You're right, the eye has two lenses.
Oh.
The cornea provides the initial focusing power, kind of like setting the zoom on a camera.
Mm-hmm.
Then, the lens inside your eye fine-tunes the focus, allowing you to see objects near and far.
Oh, that makes sense. So how do they measure that focusing power? I remember seeing something about diopters in Dr. Eldeeb's notes.
Ah, yes, diopters. It's like measuring the magnification power of a camera lens. The higher the diopter, the stronger the lens. The cornea has a fixed power of about 40 diopters, while the lens can change its power, adding another 15 to 30 diopters, depending on what you're looking at.
Yeah.
That flexibility is crucial for clear vision.
Now it's all clicking into place. Dr. Eldeeb's notes also broke down the eye's anatomy into 3 main layers.
Yes.
It's like an onion, right?
Okay.
You've got the outer layer, the middle layer, and the inner layer.
That's a great analogy. The outer layer is where we find the tough white sclera and the crystal clear cornea we just talked about.
Yeah.
And don't forget that amazing self-cleaning corneal reflex. Every time you blink, you're wiping your cornea clean, keeping your vision crystal clear.
Oh, that's so cool. And the middle layer, what's going on in there?
The middle layer houses the choroid, which is packed with blood vessels to keep the eye nourished. Then there's the ciliary body responsible for producing aqueous humor, a fluid we'll discuss later. And of course, nestled within this layer is the flexible lens constantly adjusting its shape to focus light. You might be surprised to learn that the lens gets its energy from glucose, but doesn't require much oxygen, unlike most tissues in the body.
Wow, so it's like a super efficient energy saver, but doesn't that also make it vulnerable to things like diabetes, which affects how the body uses glucose?
That's a great observation. You're right, this unique metabolism of the lens can be affected by diabetes, potentially leading to cataract formation.
It's amazing how everything is connected. So we've got the cornea and lens focusing light, but what about controlling how much light actually gets in? That's where the iris and pupil come in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The iris, the colored part of your eye, acts like the diaphragm of a camera controlling the size of the pupil. In bright light, the pupil constricts to limit the amount of light entering, While in dim light, it dilates to let in more light, helping you see better in low light conditions.
Speaking of all these parts working together, there's also this incredible fluid constantly being made inside your eye, the aqueous humor. Sounds kind of creepy, but it must be important if it's constantly being produced.
You're absolutely right. Aqueous humor is vital for maintaining the shape of the eye and nourishing the cornea, which doesn't have its own blood vessels. It's constantly being produced by the ciliary processes and drains through a network of channels called the trabeculae.
So there's this constant flow of fluid in and out of the eye. What happens if that flow gets disrupted?
Well, that's where things can get a bit tricky. The continuous flow of aqueous humor is crucial for regulating intraocular pressure, the pressure inside your eye. If the drainage system gets clogged, pressure can build up.
I'm guessing that's not a good thing.
You're right to be concerned. Elevated intraocular pressure can damage the optic nerve, leading to a condition called glaucoma, a leading cause of blindness. And the scary part is many people don't realize they have it until significant damage has already occurred.
Yikes, that's definitely a good reason to get regular eye checkups. So how does glaucoma actually damage the optic nerve? Is it like squeezing a garden hose?
It's a good analogy. Increased pressure compresses the delicate nerve fibers in the optic nerve, disrupting the flow of visual signals from the eye to the brain. Imagine a slow leak in a pipe, gradually causing damage over time. That's similar to open-angle glaucoma, the most common type. But there's also angle closure glaucoma, which is more like a sudden blockage in the pipe, causing a rapid and painful pressure spike.
Oh, that sounds terrifying. But luckily, early detection is key, right? If you catch it early, there are treatments to manage the pressure and protect your vision.
Exactly. That's why regular eye exams are so crucial. Early detection and treatment can make a world of difference in preserving your sight. But let's move on to another fascinating aspect of vision: accommodation, the ability of your eye to adjust its focus.
Ah, accommodation. That's what lets us seamlessly shift focus from something far away to something right in front of us, right. It always amazes me how quickly our eyes can do that.
It is remarkable. Think about our ancestors, spotting a predator in the distance and then instantly focusing on a nearby escape route. That rapid shift in focus was crucial for survival. But behind that seemingly simple action is a complex reflex involving three key components: convergence, pupillary constriction, and accommodation of the lens.
Okay, so break that down for me. Convergence, is that like when your eyes
You
cross?
got it. Convergence is when both eyes turn inward to focus on a nearby object. It ensures that the image falls on the same spot in each eye, giving us depth perception. Then the pupil constricts to sharpen the image, just like closing down the aperture on a camera. And finally, the lens changes shape to increase its focusing power.
So if the lens changes shape, what's actually doing the squeezing and shaping?
That's where the ciliary muscle and suspensory ligaments come into play. The ciliary muscle contracts, pulling on the suspensory ligaments, which in turn changes the shape of the lens. It's a delicate dance of muscles and ligaments, all orchestrated by your brain.
That's mind-blowing. But I've heard that this ability to accommodate declines with age. Does that mean our eyes are just destined to get weaker as we get older?
It's true that as we age, the lens naturally stiffens, making it harder to accommodate for near vision. This is called presbyopia, and it's the reason why many people need reading glasses as they get older. Essentially, the near point of vision, the closest distance you can see, clearly starts to move further away.
So if the lens stiffens with age, why can't we just exercise our eye muscles to keep them flexible, like bicep curls for our eyes?
That's a great question. Unfortunately, it's not that simple. The stiffening of the lens is primarily due to changes in the protein structure within the lens itself, not a lack of muscle strength.
Well, that's a bummer. But I guess that's why reading glasses were invented. Speaking of seeing clearly, how do eye doctors actually measure how well we see? I'm talking about those Snellen eye charts with the big E at the top.
Ah, yes, the Snellen chart. It's a classic test of visual acuity, which is basically the sharpness of your vision. It's based on the concept of two-point discrimination, your ability to see 2 points as separate rather than a single blur. The further down the chart you can read, the better your visual acuity.
And that 20/20 vision everyone talks about, what does that actually mean?
20/20 vision means you can see at 20 feet what a person with normal vision can see at 20 feet. But there are other ways to assess vision too, like counting fingers or detecting hand movements, especially if someone's vision is significantly impaired.
So it's not just about reading letters on a chart. There are different ways to gauge how well someone can see.
Exactly, and a comprehensive eye exam goes beyond just visual acuity. It also assesses things like your peripheral vision, color perception, and the overall health of your eye structures.
Now, let's shine a light literally on another cool reflex, the pupillary light reflex.
Okay.
Shine a light in one eye, and both pupils constrict. It's not just about regulating light, though. It can also tell doctors a lot about your overall health.
It's a window into the nervous system. This reflex involves a pathway that travels from the retina through the optic nerve to the brain and back to the muscles that control the pupil. It's incredibly fast and usually symmetrical, meaning both pupils react even if you shine the light in only one eye.
Wait, so if both pupils constrict, even when the light is only in one eye, doesn't that mean there's some kind of crossover happening in the brain? Like the signal from one eye is somehow affecting the other eye?
You're absolutely right. There's a partial crossover of nerve fibers at a point called the optic chiasm, which allows information from both eyes to be processed together in the brain. That's what enables things like depth perception and binocular vision.
That makes you wonder if the signal crosses over, could shining a light in one eye tell doctors something about the health of the other eye's nerve pathway?
That's a very astute observation. And you're right, the pupillary light reflex can indeed reveal problems in the nerve pathway, even if the eye itself appears healthy. For example, there's a condition called an afferent pupillary defect, where the pupil of the affected eye constricts less than the other pupil when light is shown in it. This can indicate damage to the optic nerve or other parts of the visual pathway.
So it's not just about the pupils themselves, but about the entire pathway the signal travels. It's incredible how much information can be gleaned from a simple reflex. And speaking of vision problems, we've talked about presbyopia, which comes with age, but what about other common issues?
Well, there are other refractive errors that can affect people of all ages, like hypermetropia or farsightedness, which is difficulty seeing near objects.
Okay.
This can be corrected with convex lenses, which converge light rays before they enter the eye. Then there's myopia or nearsightedness, which is difficulty seeing distant objects. This is corrected with concave lenses, which diverge light rays, making them spread out before entering the eye.
Okay, so convex lenses for farsightedness, concave lenses for nearsightedness. Got it. What about astigmatism? I know that has something to do with the shape of the cornea, right?
Exactly. Astigmatism is caused by an unevenly curved cornea, which distorts the incoming light. It's kind of like looking through a warped window. Luckily, it can be corrected with special cylindrical lenses that compensate for the irregular curvature.
It's amazing how something as simple as the shape of your cornea can affect your vision. But I guess that's the theme of today's deep dive, the incredible complexity and interconnectedness of the visual system. Everything from the physics of light to the intricate anatomy of the eye plays a role in shaping how we see the world.
Absolutely. And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to explore, from the fascinating world of color vision to the incredible processing power of the brain. But we'll save those topics for another deep dive. For now, let's take a moment to appreciate the miracle of sight and the intricate symphony of processes that make it all possible.
It really is mind-blowing when you think about all the intricate parts working together to create the visual world we experience.
I know, right?
We've talked about how light enters the eye and gets focused by the cornea and lens, but where does it go from there? What actually happens inside the eye to turn that light into something our brain can understand?
That's where the retina takes center stage.
Okay.
Think of it as the movie screen at the back of your eye where the light show truly begins.
Right. The retina, that's that innermost layer Dr. Eldeeb mentioned, packed with those light-sensitive cells called rods and cones.
Yes,
They're like the tiny receptors capturing all that incoming light.
precisely. Rods are like the night owls of the eye, incredibly sensitive and allowing us to see in low light, even starlight. They're responsible for our peripheral vision and detecting motion. Cones, on the other hand, are all about color and detail. They function best in bright light and are concentrated in the central part of the retina, a region called the macula.
And within the macula is that tiny pit called the fovea, right? The notes mention that's where our sharpest vision is.
Exactly. The fovea is packed with cones, giving us that crisp, clear, central vision we need for tasks like reading, recognizing faces, or threading a needle. It's like having a built-in zoom lens, constantly adjusting to bring the world into focus.
Oh, wow. So every time we shift our gaze to focus on something, we're basically aiming our fovea at it. It's like a little targeting system.
You got it. The constant dance between our eyes and our brains working together to capture the visual information we need to navigate the world.
It makes you appreciate those moments when you're trying to thread a needle and your eyes keep making those tiny adjustments to get everything perfectly lined up.
Right.
Speaking of things floating around in our vision, what about those little specks or strands we sometimes see? Those floaters Dr. Eldeeb mentioned. Are those just bits of dust or something?
Not quite dust, but you're on the right track.
Okay.
Floaters are actually tiny clumps of protein or cellular debris that cast shadows on the retina. They're suspended in the vitreous humor, the gel-like substance that fills the back part of the eye.
So it's like having tiny shadows moving across our movie screen.
That's a great way to visualize it. Floaters are usually harmless and just a normal part of aging as the vitreous humor gradually changes consistency. However, if you notice a sudden increase in floaters, especially if accompanied by flashes of light, it's important to see an eye doctor right away as it could signal a more serious problem.
Good to know. And while we're on the topic of things we see that aren't actually there, what about that blind spot we talked about earlier? Is it like a tiny black hole in our vision? How come we don't walk around bumping into things all the time?
It's a fascinating phenomenon. The blind spot is located where the optic nerve exits the eye. There are no photoreceptors, those rods and cones we talked about in that spot, so any light landing there goes undetected.
So there's a literal gap in our visual input.
Yes, but our brains are incredibly clever. They fill in the missing information based on the surrounding visual cues and our understanding of the world. It's like a visual autocorrect, constantly working behind the scenes to create a seamless visual experience.
That is so cool. We literally have a blind spot, and most of the time we're completely unaware of it.
Right.
It's a testament to the brain's amazing ability to adapt and compensate. Speaking of the optic nerve, it's kind of like the information superhighway from the eye to the brain, right? All those signals from the rods and cones are racing along that nerve to get processed and interpreted.
Precisely. The optic nerve is a bundle of millions of nerve fibers, each carrying a tiny electrical signal from the retina to the brain. It's like a complex network of cables transmitting data at lightning speed.
So you've got light entering the eye, hitting the retina, and those signals getting sent off to the brain via the optic nerve. But what's happening in between? How does a light hitting the retina actually get transformed into those electrical signals? It seems like there must be some magic happening at a microscopic level.
You're right, there is some fascinating chemistry involved.
Okay.
When a photon of light hits a rod or cone cell, it triggers a cascade of chemical reactions. These reactions involve light-sensitive molecules called photopigments, which change shape when they absorb light. This shape change sets off a chain reaction that ultimately leads to a change in the cell's electrical charge, generating a tiny electrical signal.
Okay, so it's like a domino effect.
Yes.
Light hits the photopigment, the molecule changes shape, and that triggers a cascade of events that ultimately generates an electrical signal.
Exactly. It's a remarkable process of converting light energy into electrical energy, the language of the nervous system. And these tiny signals from millions of individual rod and cone cells are then integrated and transmitted along the optic nerve to the brain, where they are decoded and interpreted as the images we see.
It's incredible to think that all of this is happening constantly. Every moment we're awake and we're completely oblivious to it. We just open our eyes and see the world. But I have to ask, are all eyes and all visual experiences created equal? I mean, do we all see the world in the same way?
That's a great question. While the basic structure and function of the eye are the same for everyone, there's definitely individual variation in how we perceive the world. We've talked about refractive errors like myopia and hypermetropia, which affect how clearly we see. But there are also differences in things like color perception, depth perception, and even the sensitivity of our rods and cones.
So some people might see colors more vividly than others, or have better night vision.
Exactly. And then there are conditions like color blindness, which affect the ability to distinguish between certain colors. It's usually caused by a genetic deficiency in one or more of the cone types, leading to difficulty differentiating between reds and greens, blues and yellows, or, in rare cases, seeing any color at all.
I remember learning in school that the most common type is red-green color blindness, which affects mostly males.
That's right. And while it can create challenges in certain situations, most people with color blindness adapt and learn to compensate. They might rely on other cues like brightness or patterns to distinguish between colors.
It's a good reminder that what we perceive as reality is actually filtered through our own unique sensory experiences.
It is.
We might all be looking at the same world, but our brains are processing that information in slightly different ways.
Yeah,
That's pretty fascinating.
it is. And speaking of the brain, we can't forget that it's the ultimate interpreter of visual information.
Right.
The signals from the eyes are just raw data. It's the brain that transforms those signals into the rich, colorful, three-dimensional world we experience.
So the eye is like the camera capturing the light, but it's the brain that develops the film and creates the final picture.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And the brain is incredibly adept at this task. It can fill in missing information, correct for distortions, and even create the illusion of movement from a series of still images.
That's mind-blowing. It makes you wonder if the brain is so actively involved in constructing our visual experience, what else is it capable of? Could it be tricked or manipulated?
That's a question that has fascinated scientists and artists for centuries. Think about optical illusions, those images that play tricks on our perception. They demonstrate the power of the brain to interpret visual information in unexpected ways.
It's like our brains are constantly making assumptions about the world based on our past experiences and expectations, and sometimes those assumptions can lead to some pretty wild visual illusions.
Exactly. The brain is constantly seeking patterns, making predictions, and filling in the gaps. It's a remarkably efficient system, but it's not foolproof. And that's what makes the study of vision so fascinating. It's a window into the complex interplay between the physical world and our own internal perception of it. But before we delve further into the brain's role in vision, let's talk about another crucial aspect of how we see eye movements.
Eye movements. I mean, I know our eyes are constantly moving, but I never really thought about why or how. It seems so automatic.
You're right, it is largely automatic. But those movements, even the tiny ones we're not aware of, are essential for clear and stable vision. They allow us to track moving objects, maintain a steady image on the retina despite head movements, and scan our environment to gather information.
So even when we think we're staring straight ahead, our eyes are actually making tiny adjustments to keep the image sharp and focused. It's like they're constantly refreshing the view.
Exactly. Those tiny, jerky movements are called saccades, and they happen several times per second. They prevent the photoreceptors on the retina from adapting to a constant stimulus, which would cause the image to fade. It's like taking multiple snapshots of the world and piecing them together to create a continuous visual experience.
Oh, that's amazing. It's like our eyes are taking thousands of tiny pictures every minute, and our brain is seamlessly stitching them together to create a smooth, flowing movie. But what about those times when our eyes make bigger, smoother movements, like when we're reading or watching someone walk across the room? Those are different, right?
You're right, those are called smooth pursuit movements, and they're essential for tracking moving objects. They allow us to keep the image of the object focused on the fovea, that sweet spot of sharpest vision, ensuring that we maintain clear vision despite the object's motion.
So saccades are for keeping a static image sharp, and smooth pursuits are for tracking moving targets. It's like our eyes have two different modes of operation depending on the situation.
Precisely. And there are other types of eye movements as well, like vergence movements, where the eyes move in opposite directions to focus on objects at different distances. It's a complex and coordinated system involving multiple muscles and neural pathways, all working together to ensure that we have the visual information we need to interact with the world.
It makes you wonder what happens if those eye movements get disrupted. Is that what causes things like double vision or motion sickness?
You're onto something. There are a number of conditions that can affect eye movements, leading to a variety of visual disturbances. For example, strabismus, or crossed eyes, occurs when the eyes are misaligned, preventing them from focusing on the same point in space. This can lead to double vision or suppression of one eye's image by the brain. And nystagmus, a condition characterized by involuntary repetitive eye movements, can cause blurry vision, difficulty focusing, and even dizziness.
It's fascinating and a bit unnerving to think about how much we rely on these precise eye movements for clear and stable vision. It really highlights how delicate and intricate the visual system is.
It certainly does. And as with any complex system, there are many things that can go wrong. But there are also many remarkable ways that the brain can compensate and adapt.
Speaking of adaptation, let's circle back to a topic we touched on earlier, accommodation, the ability of the eye to change its focus. You mentioned that this ability declines with age, leading to presbyopia and the need for reading glasses. Is there anything we can do to slow down that process or prevent it altogether?
Well, unfortunately, presbyopia is a natural part of aging, just like wrinkles and gray hair. It's primarily due to changes in the protein structure within the lens, making it less flexible over time. However, there are things we can do to maintain overall eye health and potentially delay the onset of age-related vision problems.
So what kind of things can we do to keep our eyes healthy and functioning at their best?
It's all about those healthy lifestyle choices we hear about all the time. Eating a balanced diet rich in fruits, vegetables, and omega-3 fatty acids is important for eye health. Getting regular exercise and maintaining a healthy weight can also benefit your vision by improving blood flow and reducing your risk of chronic diseases like diabetes, which can damage the eyes.
And of course, we can't forget about protecting our eyes from the sun's harmful UV rays with sunglasses.
Absolutely. UV exposure can contribute to cataracts and macular degeneration, so sunglasses are a must, even on cloudy days. And if you smoke, quitting is one of the best things you can do for your overall health, including your eye health.
So while we can't stop the clock entirely, we can certainly make choices that support healthy aging and potentially delay or minimize age-related vision changes. That's encouraging to hear.
It is. And remember, even if you do develop age-related vision changes, there are many options available to help you maintain clear and comfortable vision, from reading glasses and bifocals to cataract surgery and other advanced treatments.
It's amazing how technology continues to advance, offering solutions for a wide range of vision challenges. It's a testament to the ingenuity and dedication of researchers who are constantly working to improve the lives of people with vision loss or impairments.
It's inspiring to see how science and technology are pushing the boundaries of what's possible in the field of vision. And it's not just about restoring sight. Researchers are also exploring ways to enhance vision for people with normal sight. Imagine being able to see in the dark, zoom in on distant objects with incredible clarity, or even perceive a wider spectrum of colors.
It's like something out of a science fiction movie. The possibilities seem endless.
They really do. And while some of these ideas might seem far-fetched, remember that not so long ago, things like laser eye surgery and retinal implants would have seemed like science fiction too.
It's true. Technology is constantly evolving, and it's exciting to think about what the future holds for the field of vision.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before we jump into the future, there's still so much to explore about the present. The incredible complexity of the human eye, the remarkable processing power of the brain, and the fascinating ways that vision shapes our experience of the world.
You're right. We've covered a lot of ground today, but it feels like we've only just scratched the surface. But that's the beauty of learning, isn't it? There's always more to discover, more questions to ask, and more mysteries to unravel. And I, for one, am excited to keep exploring. It's amazing how we started this deep dive talking about like the physics of light and the anatomy of the eye, and now we're talking about the future of vision and all these limitless possibilities of science.
I know, it's incredible.
It really highlights how intertwined vision is with like every aspect of our lives and our understanding of the world around us.
It really is. Vision isn't just about processing light and forming images. It's about connecting with the world, experiencing its beauty, navigating its complexities, and forming meaningful relationships with others. It shapes our emotions, influences our decisions, and enriches our lives in countless ways.
Yeah, it's true. Think about how a simple smile from a loved one can instantly brighten your day, or how a breathtaking view from a mountaintop can evoke feelings of awe and wonder.
Right?
These experiences are so deeply tied to our sense of sight.
Absolutely. Vision is the gateway to those experiences. It allows us to appreciate art, immerse ourselves in nature, and connect with others on a deeper level. It's a fundamental part of what makes us human.
It makes you realize how much we take our vision for granted until we imagine life without it. And unfortunately, for millions of people around the world, vision loss is a reality. Whether due to age-related conditions like macular degeneration, genetic disorders, or injuries, losing your sight can have a profound impact on your life.
It certainly can. But thankfully, there are many organizations dedicated to helping people with vision loss maintain their independence and quality of life. They offer services like vision rehabilitation, assistive technology training, and support groups to help people adapt to their new reality and find ways to thrive.
That's heartwarming to hear. It's a reminder that even in the face of challenges, there's always hope and the potential for adaptation and human connection.
And it's not just about adapting to vision loss. Researchers are making incredible strides in developing new treatments and technologies aimed at restoring vision, or even enhancing it beyond its natural capabilities.
That's right. We touched on this earlier. It's like science fiction becoming reality. Things like retinal implants, gene therapies, and even bionic eyes are no longer just the stuff of movies.
I know.
They're real possibilities that hold immense promise for the future of vision.
Exactly. Imagine a world where blindness is no longer a life sentence, where people with vision loss can regain their sight and experience the world in all its vibrant detail. And for those with normal vision, imagine being able to see in the dark, zoom in on distant objects with incredible clarity, or even perceive a wider range of colors than ever before.
Yeah, the possibilities are truly mind-boggling. It's like we're on the cusp of a new era of vision, where the boundaries of what's possible are constantly being pushed further and further.
It's an exciting time to be following the advancements in vision science and technology. Who knows what incredible breakthroughs await us in the years to come?
Well, I think it's safe to say that this deep dive has been a real eye-opener. We've journeyed from the basic physics of light to the intricate workings of the eye, the remarkable processing power of the brain, and the profound impact vision has on our lives and our understanding of the world.
We've explored the challenges of vision loss and the inspiring innovations aimed at restoring and enhancing sight. It's a complex and fascinating field, and I hope this deep dive has sparked your curiosity to learn even more.
Absolutely. It's amazing to think that something we use every single moment of our waking lives is so intricate and multifaceted. It makes you appreciate the miracle of sight even more.
It truly does. And while we've covered a lot of ground today, remember that there's always more to explore, more questions to ask, and more to discover about the incredible world of vision.
Well said. To our listeners, we hope this deep dive has ignited your curiosity about the wonders of human vision. If you're interested in learning more, we encourage you to check out the show notes for links to additional resources.
And remember, whether you're gazing at a starry night sky or simply appreciating the smile of a loved one, take a moment to marvel at the gift of sight and all the wonders it allows you to experience.
Beautifully said. And as always, thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.